Have you ever felt like your thoughts are controlling you? That your mind is racing uncontrollably, pulling you in every direction? Have you wondered why it's so hard to stop overthinking or to let go of those negative thoughts that just seem to linger? If so, you're not alone. The truth is, we're all trapped by our minds, often without even realizing it. But what if I told you that this mental struggle, this endless loop of anxiety, worry, and doubt could be escaped? Imagine breaking free from the chains of overthinking, fear, and stress. What if peace and freedom from your own mind were closer than you think? Today, we're going to explore how you can unlock the secret to escaping the trap of your own mind and how Buddhist teachings can guide you on this journey. So, if you're ready to find freedom and clarity, stay with us and dive into this transformative experience. Understanding the trap. The cycle of negative thinking can feel all-consuming, but the key to breaking free from it lies in developing awareness. Awareness, particularly mindfulness, is at the heart of Buddhist teachings. Mindfulness is the practice of observing our thoughts without judgment. It's not about suppressing or ignoring negative thoughts, but rather recognizing them and making a conscious decision not to be controlled by them. When negative thoughts arise, it's easy to get caught up in them. For example, many people find themselves replaying thoughts about their abilities, career, or future. These thoughts often trigger feelings of doubt and anxiety. But the first step in breaking this cycle is to recognize that these thoughts do not define us. They are simply thoughts that arise in the mind, and they do not have to control our emotional state or actions. In Buddhist philosophy, mindfulness is seen as a tool to cultivate awareness of the present moment. The essence of mindfulness is being fully engaged with the here and now, not letting the mind wander into past regrets or future worries. When we practice mindfulness, we learn to step back from the stream of thoughts and emotions, observing them as they arise without getting caught up in them. This is not a passive process, but an active choice to acknowledge thoughts without becoming entangled in them. The practice of mindfulness doesn't require that we eliminate negative thoughts entirely. Rather, it teaches us to develop a different relationship with them. We can acknowledge the thought, "I'm not doing enough, I'll never succeed," without allowing it to dictate our actions or emotions. It's about creating space between the thought and our reaction. And that space allows us to make more conscious decisions about how we respond. Take a moment to reflect on your own thought patterns. How often do you catch yourself replaying negative thoughts about your abilities, career, or future? These kinds of thoughts are not unusual, but they can become overwhelming if we don't learn to observe them with awareness. Instead of allowing ourselves to be swept away by them, we can take a step back, breathe deeply, and bring our focus back to the present moment. This simple pause creates a break in the cycle, allowing us to recenter and gain clarity. I remember a specific moment in my life when I was overwhelmed with doubt about my career. I kept thinking to myself, "I'm not doing enough. I'll never succeed." These thoughts were loud and persistent, but instead of getting consumed by them, I practiced pausing. I focused on my breath and reminded myself that these thoughts weren't permanent. They were like clouds in the sky, temporary and fleeting. By bringing my attention back to the present, I was able to reduce the weight of my negative thoughts. Over time, this practice helped me develop resilience and the ability to stay grounded, even in the face of self-doubt. Mindfulness creates a space in which we can make more conscious choices instead of reacting automatically to our thoughts and feelings. We stop being at the mercy of our thoughts and begin to take control of how we respond to them. This sense of control and clarity is the power of awareness. It's the ability to choose how to engage with our thoughts and emotions rather than simply reacting to them. Ultimately, mindfulness allows us to see that thoughts are just that, thoughts. They come and go, and they don't define us unless we allow them to. By cultivating awareness, we create the space necessary to let go of unnecessary stress, gain perspective, and make choices that align with our true values and goals. This practice is transformative because it shifts the focus from reacting to responding. And in doing so, it empowers us to take charge of our mental and emotional well-being. The power of awareness. Breaking the cycle of negative thinking begins with awareness. The concept of mindfulness, as taught in Buddhism, is about observing our thoughts without judgment. It's crucial to understand that mindfulness is not about ignoring or suppressing negative thoughts. Rather, it involves recognizing these thoughts, acknowledging their presence, and making a conscious choice not to let them control us. Many people often find themselves replaying negative thoughts, particularly about their abilities, career, or future. These thoughts can easily spiral out of control, creating a cascade of doubts, fears, and anxieties. It's not uncommon to catch yourself thinking, "I'm not good enough," or "I'll never succeed," instead of allowing these thoughts to dominate. The practice of mindfulness invites us to pause and bring our attention back to the present moment. This simple act of pausing can disrupt the negative cycle and create space for a more grounded and balanced perspective. The power of mindfulness lies in its ability to shift our relationship with our thoughts. When we're able to step back and observe our thoughts, rather than becoming engulfed by them, we reclaim control over our mental state. In essence, mindfulness creates a gap between stimulus and response, giving us the opportunity to choose how we react. This gap is crucial for breaking the automatic patterns of thought that often lead to stress and anxiety. Consider a personal example of experiencing doubt about one's career. When I was struggling with feelings of inadequacy, I found myself repeatedly thinking, "I'm not doing enough," or "I'll never achieve what I want." These thoughts were pervasive, and they created a constant state of tension and self-doubt. However, through mindfulness, I began practicing the simple act of pausing when these thoughts arose. I focused on my breath, bringing my attention back to the present moment. I reminded myself that these thoughts were temporary. They were like clouds in the sky, passing by without leaving a permanent mark. Over time, this practice of pausing and focusing on the breath helped me break free from the grip of negative thinking. By observing my thoughts without judgment, I realized that they didn't define me. They were just passing mental events that didn't need to dictate my actions or my emotional state. This realization allowed me to stay grounded and let go of unnecessary stress. Mindfulness is a practice that requires patience and consistency. The more we practice being aware of our thoughts without attaching to them, the more we cultivate the ability to stay present and respond thoughtfully. By shifting from reaction to conscious choice, we begin to live more intentionally. We stop reacting automatically to every negative thought and, instead, make the choice to engage with the present moment. The key takeaway here is that mindfulness empowers us to take control of our mental landscape. Instead of being led by our thoughts, we learn to observe them from a place of detachment. This allows us to see them for what they are, temporary mental events that do not need to shape our reality. As we practice mindfulness, we create a mental space where we can make deliberate choices, align with our values, and let go of unnecessary emotional baggage. In this space, we find greater peace, clarity, and freedom, the illusion of the self. In Buddhism, one of the most profound teachings is the concept of the illusion of the self. Often referred to as the ego, we tend to view ourselves as fixed identities. I am this person with these qualities, this job, this history, and these preferences. However, Buddhism teaches that this sense of self is, in fact, an illusion. It is a collection of thoughts, beliefs, and perceptions that we have become attached to over time. The ego is not a stable or permanent entity, but rather a shifting and ever-changing construct. The concept of the ego is crucial because it creates the boundaries that divide me from you and us from them. This sense of separation is at the heart of much of the suffering we experience in life. We develop a strong attachment to the idea of an individual, independent self, and this attachment leads us to view others as separate from us. We begin to form judgments based on these perceived boundaries, which can result in feelings of competition, fear, and isolation. We react to the world not as a whole, but as a fragmented collection of individuals and situations. This division feeds into suffering by perpetuating conflict, misunderstanding, and loneliness. When we begin to realize that the self is not as fixed and separate as we once thought, we can start to let go of these boundaries. Buddhism teaches that the key to overcoming suffering lies in realizing that we are not distinct from others but rather part of a greater whole. This awareness helps to dissolve the illusion of separateness and opens us to a deeper sense of connection with the world and the people around us. This realization does not mean we lose our sense of individuality, but rather that we come to understand our true nature as interconnected with all beings. A powerful metaphor often used to illustrate this teaching is the drop of water in the ocean. While the drop appears to be separate from the ocean, it is, in reality, inseparable from it. The drop contains the ocean, and the ocean contains the drop. In the same way, when we let go of the ego, we realize that we are not separate from the world around us. We are deeply interconnected with it, just as the drop is inseparable from the ocean. This understanding shifts our perspective and allows us to experience a profound sense of unity and compassion toward others. By letting go of the illusion of the self, we open ourselves to a deeper connection with the world. When we no longer view ourselves as separate from others, we can begin to approach the world with more openness, kindness, and understanding. The ego often clouds our perception, creating division and fostering negative emotions like jealousy, anger, and fear. Without the ego's influence, we are more likely to see others as they truly are, beings with their own hopes, struggles, and experiences. This shift in perspective can cultivate compassion, as we recognize the interconnectedness of all life. Furthermore, letting go of the ego does not mean we deny our personal experiences or identities, but rather that we no longer cling to them as the defining factor of who we are. We move beyond the idea of a fixed, unchanging self and embrace the fluidity of existence. This awareness can bring about a sense of freedom, as we no longer feel bound by the limitations we've placed on ourselves. Instead of being trapped by the narrow identity that the ego creates, we can expand our consciousness to include the entire world around us. Ultimately, the realization of the illusion of the self is not just a philosophical concept, but a practical tool for reducing suffering and increasing compassion. When we see ourselves as part of a greater whole, we are more likely to act with kindness, understanding, and generosity. By letting go of the ego, we can experience a profound sense of peace, unity, and connection that transcends the limitations of individual identity. Letting go of attachment. Buddhism teaches that desire and attachment are the root causes of suffering. We attach ourselves to things, relationships, possessions, goals, believing that they will bring us lasting happiness. But the truth is, everything in life is temporary. People come and go, possessions break, and even our achievements fade with time. Example, think about the times when you've had a strong attachment to something, only for it to change or disappear. Perhaps a relationship ended, or you lost something you cherished. This attachment leads to pain because we cling to things that are impermanent. Buddhism encourages us to practice the middle way, neither clinging to things nor completely detaching, but learning to appreciate life as it comes without being ruled by desires. Facing fear with courage. Fear is another powerful trap our minds create. Fear is natural, built into our survival instincts to protect us from danger. But in modern life, most of our fears are not about immediate physical threats, but about potential future events, many of which never come to pass. Example, I remember a time when I was afraid to speak in public. The fear of judgment and failure consumed me, but I learned to face that fear. I acknowledged it, understood that it was just a reaction of my mind, and took small steps to move through it. With each step, the fear diminished. Buddhism teaches us that fear, like all emotions, is temporary. By facing it without resistance, we can overcome it. This is similar to the story of a monk who, when faced with a dangerous tiger in the forest, chose not to run or resist but simply sat in meditation. The tiger eventually left, not because the monk fought it, but because he didn't react in fear. The practice of present moment awareness. Living in the present moment is one of the most powerful practices in Buddhism. Our minds are often racing with thoughts about the past and future, preventing us from fully experiencing life as it is. But when we can pause and simply observe the present, we find peace. Example, try taking a moment right now to focus on your breath. Inhale deeply, hold for a few seconds, and then exhale slowly. Notice how the air feels as it enters your lungs, the rhythm of your breath. For a few moments, you are no longer lost in thought. You are simply present. Cultivating compassion. Compassion serves as a powerful antidote to the mental traps that often keep us stuck in judgment and negativity. It is not just a fleeting emotion but a deliberate practice that can transform our approach to both ourselves and others. By cultivating compassion, we create a shift in how we perceive ourselves and the world around us, allowing us to break free from the cycle of self-criticism and judgment that keeps us confined. When we are critical of ourselves, we often fall into a negative thought pattern where we repeatedly judge our actions, choices, or mistakes. This creates a vicious cycle that feeds into feelings of shame, guilt, and frustration, making it difficult to move forward. Instead of embracing growth, we become paralyzed by self-doubt, which prevents us from making positive changes or learning from our experiences. However, when we respond to ourselves with compassion, the entire dynamic shifts. Compassion invites us to view ourselves with kindness, understanding, and patience. It allows us to acknowledge our mistakes without attaching shame or regret to them. This shift in perspective doesn't erase the mistake, but it changes how we relate to it. Rather than being consumed by guilt, we can look at the situation with the understanding that mistakes are part of the human experience and offer opportunities for growth. An example of this can be found in the way we treat ourselves after making a mistake. Imagine a time when you were particularly hard on yourself, perhaps after a failure at work or a personal setback. In that moment, it's easy to be self-critical and focus solely on the negative aspects of what happened. Now, imagine if, instead of spiraling into self-criticism, you responded with compassion. Instead of berating yourself, you take a deep breath, acknowledge the mistake with a sense of understanding, and gently remind yourself that everyone makes mistakes, including those you admire. This shift in mindset can be incredibly healing. Instead of getting stuck in feelings of regret, you allow yourself to grow from the experience. Compassion breaks the cycle of negativity, enabling us to see mistakes as stepping stones rather than roadblocks. This approach not only helps us move past our mistakes more quickly, but it also fosters a sense of peace and self-acceptance. Furthermore, compassion extends beyond how we treat ourselves. It also influences how we interact with others. When we approach others with compassion, we break down barriers of judgment and division, rather than seeing others through the lens of their mistakes or flaws. Compassion helps us recognize their humanity and connect with them on a deeper level. This fosters understanding, empathy, and a sense of unity, allowing us to build stronger relationships and reduce conflict. In both our personal and interpersonal lives, cultivating compassion is essential for breaking free from the mental traps of negativity and judgment. It allows us to experience greater emotional freedom, paving the way for healing, growth, and connection. Through this practice, we not only transform our own lives but also contribute to creating a more compassionate world. Conclusion: the path to freedom from the trap of your mind is a lifelong journey. It begins with awareness, recognizing the patterns of thought that create suffering. By practicing mindfulness, letting go of attachment, facing fear with courage, living in the present moment, and cultivating compassion, you can break free from the cycle of suffering and find lasting peace. Remember, this journey takes time. Be patient with yourself. Just as a seed slowly grows into a tree, your practice will evolve, bringing you closer to the true freedom that lies within. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the Buddhist path to mental liberation. If you found this video insightful, please like, comment, and subscribe to the Light of Buddhism for more transformative teachings. Peace and clarity are always within reach. As we come to the end of this journey through the mind, remember this: the trap is not as strong as you think, and freedom is always within your reach. Through awareness, compassion, and a shift in perspective, you can free yourself from the endless cycles of doubt, fear, and judgment. The key lies not in trying to control your thoughts, but in observing them without attachment, allowing them to pass like clouds in the sky. In Buddhist teachings, we find that true peace comes not from a life free of challenges, but from the ability to face them with a clear and compassionate mind. So take a moment today to pause, breathe, and recognize the thoughts that bind you. Let go of the illusion of control and start living in the present, where peace awaits. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more wisdom and insights into how to live a life free from the traps of the mind. Stay present, stay mindful, and most importantly, stay free.